All right, y'all, welcome to Workshop Wednesday. Today we're going to be going over how to pack your pack for all kinds of occasions. We're going to talk about like backpacking and like day hikes. My name is Christina Maples.
I'm Chris McCarthy.
We'll do our introductions, and then folks on the call can maybe, before we do like question and answer stuff, do some of their own intros. So I'm Christina, my pronouns are she, hers. I'm currently studying, getting my master's in social work in school. I came to the outdoor program because I really like doing stuff outside and the community that comes out of that. And my favorite space outside is probably like on top of any mountain at like sunrise or sunset.
And I'm Chris. I go by he, him. And I'm in school right now for my undergrad in mechanical engineering. And I'm here today to kind of go over lots of the stuff that I like and how I go about doing those things. I'm here in school to try to do, hopefully move into green energy. My favorite space outside is anywhere there's big mountains. I've always been a big fan of the big mountains here in the US and all around the world.
All right, so today, like I said, we're talking about like packing a pack. One big thing you'll hear in the outdoor industry is that there's like these 10 essentials. So these are 10 things that are important to have, and if you're just out for a day hike or any overnight stuff. So a map, a compass, or just like some kind of navigation device. If you don't know how to use a compass or don't know how to use a map, is usually a good thing, but like you could use your phone for navigation too if you have apps downloaded for that. Some sort of light source like a flashlight or a headlight. Some protection for your eyes, some extra snacks for food or water, extra clothes, extra layers. Some kind of emergency fuel could be helpful if you have, or like a fire starting kit with some matches or a lighter. Some kind of like pocket knife or utensil, and then a first aid kit. So for a day hike, this is kind of a general list of what would be helpful to bring with you. And this will be posted up on YouTube later, so if you can't get all this down right now, you can go back and look at it later. But in terms of wearing things, I'd recommend like a t-shirt, good footwear, some long pants or shorts. Long pants are usually better, especially in this area. There can be like some poison oak, and so just having extra protection from your skin and the sun is helpful. Some moisture wicking socks, sunglasses, and a hat. And then these are all other things that are good to bring, and then there's some like optional stuff. Like trekking poles, a camera, journal, art supplies, binoculars, field guides. I'd say I don't personally bring like a pocket knife on just a day hike, but if I'm going on something that's like longer, I might want to bring it, or if it's like less populated, then I'm going to bring the extra things like a knife or a whistle and a lighter and stuff like that. But if it's like Powell Butte and there's a ton of people around and I'm going out in the morning and I know I'll be done earlier, then I might take the risk and not necessarily bring those things. I don't know if, Chris, you have other thoughts on that stuff.
Usually the big thing I always make sure I have plenty of is water. Lots of water for day hikes, because whether it is 40 or 100, I know I'm going to drink a lot of water. So I always make sure I have plenty of water for whatever length of hike, and then extra.
And then one other thing I'll mention, just that I notice when I'm personally on day hikes, is people will bring toilet paper with, as I mentioned here, but they like leave it and think it will decompose, but it doesn't as quickly, and it kind of just makes things look less enjoyable when you like are on a trail and see a bunch of toilet paper. So I would recommend bringing like a Ziploc bag, maybe line it with some tin foil or something if you don't want to see it, but just something to put your dirty toilet paper in, so that it doesn't end up in the woods. Cool.
Yeah, so for the basic backpacking list, this is off of the REI website. There's a link there that we can later put in the comments. This is kind of the basic stuff. You can expand upon that, and then on that as well, you can either go the really expensive route or you can go the little less expensive route. Typically, when you're looking at more expensive things, it just means it's going to be a little lighter and maybe a little bit less weight on your back as you're carrying it up a mountain or down a river. But for the primary stuff, obviously for backpacking, you need a backpack. And you can either have one that either has a rain cover built in, you can buy a rain cover for it, or you can get a backpack that is already waterproof. And again, those are going to have different price points with it, but don't worry too much about it.
One note on that too, just like the big air pads are super comfy, but if you are sleeping in like colder temperatures, especially as we're getting into winter, the air it'll suck the heat from your body into the ground unless you have some one that's insulated for warmer weather, so they have values and ratings too. Or what I do is I bring a foam pad with and put it under my sleeping pad just to kind of have some thicker insulation between me and the ground, because the ground is a big mass that is trying to pull heat. You are a small mass that is trying to retain it. So
yeah, and for sleeping pads, if you have an inflatable one and for some reason it gets a hole, then now all of a sudden you're going to be sleeping on the ground. So there are pros and cons to having the inflatable ones. They're lighter, but if it happens to get a hole in it, you might end up sleeping on the ground. So that would require either sleeping on the ground or having a patch kit, which is also highly recommended.
And if you're out for any more than a couple of days, bringing some sort of gear repair kit is usually a good idea, because you run into stuff. I think especially with the lighter things, they can be more likely to tear and rip and things like that, because they're less durable than stuff that's a little heavier.
And moving on down the list, we've got sun and bug protection. Definitely in the Pacific Northwest, we will have lots of mosquitoes, especially if you're anywhere near the Inland Peninsula or anywhere there's lots of alpine lakes. You're going to have a lot of bugs. This time of year, it's kind of perfect. You don't really need the bug juice. You can get away without it this time of year. Some areas might still have some other bugs, but mosquito spray isn't going to keep those away. Lip balm and sunscreen, highly, highly, highly recommended any time of year. One thing that can ruin your trip is a bad sunburn. And with that, especially for people that have sensitive eyes, to have sunglasses. I know I have sensitive eyes, so I always, always, always have sunglasses with me. For food and water, I like to make sure I pack at least around 1,500 calories a day, depending on kind of what I'm doing. If it's winter, I might end up packing more calories because you're going to end up burning more calories just to stay warm. Extra food is kind of one of those things that some people won't take and they'll risk it. But I don't know, I get kind of hangry when I run out of food and I don't have anything left and I have another 20 miles to hike.
And especially if you haven't done a lot of backpacking before, you'll be pretty surprised at how many calories you burn just being out, and especially if it's colder weather too. So being on the safe side rather than not is definitely a good way to go. It might mean a little extra weight, but yeah, running out of food when you've been hiking a lot throughout the day is a bummer.
Yeah.
And bringing things that are high in fat and high in protein and high in calories is peanuts and chocolate and butter and whatever else is usually a good way to go, because you can get a lot out of.
Bring those things that taste good. Don't bring something that is just lightweight but tastes horribly, because then you're not going to want to eat it.
Exactly.
That's it?
Yeah.
I was just going to keep going down the list.
Yeah. Cool.
Stuff sacks are super helpful to carry lots of loose items like food, or if you like to stuff your sleeping bag into one to take up a little less space. We'll go over some of those techniques towards the end and how we actually put some of this stuff into our bag to utilize space. With that, larger and smaller stoves, a lighter that goes with it, or something that can light the actual flame. That way you can get the stove going, and the cook set that goes with it. Going down through food and water, there's lots of stuff there, and we'll actually be able to show you those here in just a little bit, so I'll skip some of that stuff. With water bottles, having the ability to filter water and then store it is kind of necessary, and that will kind of go into some trip planning when you're able to actually stop at a water source and fill back up, and that will dictate how much water you need to be able to store and carry with you to the next place. If there's abundant water, then I might only like take a liter at a time. If I'm going to go 2 days without running across another water source, I might take up to like 6 to 8 liters. So it kind of depends on what and where you're going. If you're going to be in the desert, a lot less water. Higher mountains in the spring, a lot more water. So it just kind of depends.
And the thing to keep in mind too is like if you have a map, it might show like river systems on there, but they might be dry if it's like later in the summer and it hasn't rained all summer. So like being a little extra cautious in that regard is helpful. But yeah, so just a thing to keep in mind.
And I'll hand it over to Christina to go over clothing.
Sure. So generally for clothing, you want a good pair of hiking boots or shoes. Like I said, some socks, and I would definitely bring like an extra pair or two. Just if it rains and your feet are super wet, it's really nice to have a pair of dry socks. I usually bring a pair of socks just for sleeping in, so that even if it's like super rainy and cold during the day, I have dry socks that I can sleep in at night. And just knowing that I have that is like very reassuring. Some kind of sandals or camp shoes. Hold on, we got another friend joining us. Welcome to the workshop. We're just going over the basic backpacking checklist. And just a heads up, it's recording. So, and I'm going over clothing right now. So some camp shoes are nice to have just to like take off your boots at the end of the day and be able to throw in some like Crocs or sandals. Some long underwear. So like base layers for your top and bottom. I usually bring these to sleep in, but then if it's cold during the day, I can put them like under my pants or under my shirt and have a little extra warmth. Underwear, hiking pants and shorts, a t-shirt, a long sleeve shirt, fleece, so like a mid layer, or like a sweatshirt or something like that. Gloves and a beanie are usually a good idea, especially if you're going into like higher elevation. They'll get a lot colder than you think. And then a rain jacket and pants. They're not only good for like rain, but bugs and wind as well. And then it talks about some navigation gear here. So like I said, you don't necessarily need, like if you don't know how to use a compass, it's not going to do you that much good. But bringing like a phone and making sure you have a backup charge or a map of the area, or a compass if you want to try and figure out how to do that. I often will save like route descriptions on my phone or print them out beforehand just so I know that it's helpful to have like descriptions of areas and where you're supposed to go on different trails. Some kind of way to tell time is definitely helpful. A way to start fire, headlamp and flashlight, definitely important. And extra batteries for those too, especially in like colder weather. Batteries seem to like die out if they're cold, so I will like sleep with anything that has a battery in my sleeping bag at night. But just having some extras to pack it out or to switch it out is helpful. Bathroom stuff, so same as for a day hike, like some toilet paper, a trowel for burying your waste, hand sanitizer, any like menstrual products, a plastic bag for like your used toilet paper, other things, and a toothbrush and some toothpaste that is like biodegradable, just so we're not impacting the plants as we're like spitting out our toothpaste at night. We talked about having a repair kit with, so like a knife or some tape is good for that. For wildlife, some areas require a bear canister, and I've got one of those with, so I can show you what that looks like and how to pack it. Or they'll have you like hang up your stuff in a tree to keep critters out of it at night, so bring in some like rope for that as well. And then other things, permits if you need them, keys, your license, credit card, and an itinerary. And it's also important to like let somebody know where you're going and like what you plan to be doing while you're there, so that if anything were to happen to you, somebody else knows and they could like give good information on how to find you.
All right, how to pack our bags. So this is a kind of a basic how-to for the actual backpack of everything that we just listed, how to get it into your bag efficiently and where it's like most comfortable for you to carry it. So as you see on the left there, like some of the lighter gear that you're going to be using later in the day, like your tent, your sleeping bag, maybe a handful of other things, those will go on the bottom. And then the heaviest stuff should go in the middle of the pack closest to your back. That way you're keeping the center of balance of that pack closer to you, and it'll help keep you a little lighter on your feet in case you're going over large boulders or downhill. That way you keep a little less stress on your knees.
And then just some other things in terms of packing your pack, like if you have your rain jacket at the very bottom of your pack and all of a sudden it starts raining, it's going to be really annoying to have to pull everything out in the rain and get that on. So just being thoughtful about like what you're going to need throughout the day and how to make that more accessible. A lot of packs will have like this brain on top. So I'd usually keep my like, lunch and snacks in there and main layers and maybe like my camera and phone. And then like you usually have some like side pockets. So you could keep like a phone or a snack in there too. So you don't even have to take your pack off to
A mask.
granola bar quick. Yeah, a mask these days is also an important thing. So yeah, just being mindful about making sure that the things you might need throughout the day are accessible because yeah, it's not fun to like have to dig into your pack and get anything that you forgot. First aid kit would also be a good thing to have accessible. So yeah, it says like first aid kit, lunch, water, electronics. Making sure things are waterproof is important too. So like putting electronics in a plastic Ziploc bag or some kind of dry sack, that will be helpful. If it's gonna be more wet, like when I've done camping in the winter, I like put a whole like trash bag inside my pack and put everything inside of there so that if it rains or snows, I'm not gonna get any of my stuff wet.
Yeah, I highly recommend the trash compactor bags that you can
Yeah.
buy at most grocery stores. They're much heavier
Like the
duty,
thick black
thicker
ones,
plastic.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
contractor ones. Yeah. All right, now we're gonna demonstrate how we pack our packs. We both kind of do it a little bit differently, so I figured it'd be helpful for you guys to see some different styles and different types of gear. And then after we're done with this, we'll like open it up for questions and yeah.
If you want to go first.
Okay, so. All right, so hopefully y'all can see all my gear laid out here. So I'm gonna pack as I would if I were to use a bear canister, just because that is required in some parts of the area. And what I'm gonna think about is putting this kind of in the middle, because this is gonna be the most heavy thing. This would be what had all my food in it. So what I'll do first is I'm gonna put my stuff sack. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna put my sleeping bag at the bottom of my pack. And this can pack down really small. If I didn't have a bear canister, I might have packed it in, but since I have this, I'm gonna actually like let it out a little bit so it can kind of squish into the bottom of my pack and just line the bottom. And then I would put my bear canister in here in the middle, kind of like upright like this, and squishing down on that. And then what I've been doing recently, if I have a bear canister, is taking my tent apart and stuffing it on either side of the bear canister just to keep that right in the middle. My tent is a two-person tent, so probably wouldn't be necessary for a single-person trip. Also, I kind of planned it recently, so a little bit of mess here. So I stuffed the ground turf in. I'm going to put the tent on the other side.
Christina's using a 65-liter backpack.
Yeah. So now that's all packed in there. And then next I might squish my clothes and any extra open spaces in here.
Let me stop the share so you guys can see the bigger screen here as well. So.
Oh yeah, that's a good call.
There we go. Now everybody should see it a little bit
Sorry,
better.
Good. I don't know if I saw it before. And then my sleeping pad can go in here. And then I have like a little dry sack of like toiletries and toothbrush, toilet paper, things like that. My first aid kit. I'll put my tools on the side. This is my cup and some fuel. I've got another little plastic cup in here for coffee, so I use that to like boil water. And then a little stove. And then, so all these things are like on top and accessible. And then in my brain, put like my water filter, my headlamp, a bandana, my rain jacket can go on top. And I'd have some extra snacks or something like that in here too. I like to bring a cribbage board with, so I have some cribbage board hanging out up there. I also bring like usually a book or field guide. Where they went. And then put my puppy in the top. And I also have a sleeping bag liner. It just makes my sleeping bag a little warmer, and it also keeps it a little cleaner. This I probably would have had in with my sleeping bag, but it's out right now, so we'll just throw it in here. And then I usually bring a carabiner to attach my cracks on the outside so that they can just kind of hang out there. And I could use like some of these pockets for extra layers and extra water bottles, things like that. And there it is. Yeah. And I guess one other thing I'll talk about a little bit is in terms of like putting your pack on and like some different ways that you can, there's my book. You want the hip belt to be like on your belly button. If it's lower, you're not going to have so much hip on your hip or weight on your hips. You'll have more on your shoulders. So you can usually adjust the straps up and down so that there's like a shorter torso or longer torso to kind of get a good fit. So just experiment with all the different straps and contraptions on the back and find something that works well for you and feels comfortable. So that's all that. And now Chris is going to talk about his.
All right. So I tend to go maybe a little lighter, a little smaller on some of this stuff. So I'm going to be using a 45-liter bag. And it's got really no frills on it, but it is waterproof. So I tend not to carry a packed cover with me because of that. And then on top here, if I want extra space, I can actually extend out the top as well. And then this closes down to kind of compress everything and then seals everything on the inside. That way I don't need a pack cover or typically one of the trash compactor bags. And this is typically what I will pack for around a 3-day hike or backpacking trip or possibly climb as well. So as I'm going through putting this stuff in the bag, I will kind of show it to you. First thing I do is make sure that my sleeping pad is completely deflated, and I'll kind of fold it over a handful of times, slide it into the bag. This kind of protects everything on the inside as well. In case there's anything sharp, then just my sleeping pad will get popped, which then I can fix later if I need to. Spread it all out. Make a nice hole in the middle of the bag, so it looks like that. Then I want to take my sleeping bag, my extra clothes, and my gloves and my hat. This is all the extra clothes I bring with me for the entire trip other than what I wear, and a jacket. Those go in the bottom of my sleeping bag because I'm not going to need those until this evening. And then once I get into the bag, I'll actually change clothes. The clothes I'm going to take off will stay in my sleeping bag to help them dry. So I'll shove the clothes down there at the bottom of the sleeping bag, down to the bottom of my backpack. Push it all down, put all your weight on it, so it fills out the bottom. Next thing I want is the stuff that I'm not going to be using, like my dinners. Those aren't going to be needed until I pretty much dump everything out of my bag. I have a couple pretty lightweight dinners here. Each one of these is around like 500-600 calories. Those are going to go in. I can eat my breakfast during the day either. And these are some snacks. I might keep some other snacks out during the day like this. Maybe some peanut butter. Breakfast is going to go in. This is my tent. Pretty lightweight, small. So what I use for poles on this one, just one of my trekking poles. You combine these. This is more for this time of year when it's not super cold and also when there's no bugs. Not going to need this until much later in the day, so that's going to go in towards the bottom. My toiletries and cooking set. So this is all the toiletries I bring with me. That's it. Toothbrush, toothpaste, and floss. And that, along with my cooking set, fuel, my stove, and a cup. This is all I bring pretty well. Fuel goes in. This is my stove that attaches to the fuel that I just showed you, along with a very small knife, and then my toiletries and a lighter. So, a little pocket for my stove. Knife. So that's my stove. I don't want to waste any space, so I'm going to put my toiletries in there as well. Now my toiletries and my stove are all in one spot, taking up as little space as possible. I'm going to go into the bag. Now I can start getting some of this other stuff out of the way. Medical kit, and in my med kit, basic stuff. I usually will have a little bit of Gorilla Tape on there for repairs. Gorilla Tape has actually, for me, stopped holes in my sleeping pad and fixed tents and other things like that. So try to utilize the space as much as you can. Gloves, mask, all the rest of that stuff in here. I typically use my phone for most navigation, so I want to make sure that I have a spare battery when that runs out. All right, now if it's going to be colder, I can have a bigger puffy jacket. If it's not going to be as cold, I can have a smaller one. For now, I'll just use a smaller one that's going to go in toward the bottom as well. Now I'm about halfway through the size of my bag. Plenty of room left. Now I've got water. This is my water filter and bag, and another about 1.5 liters. So I have about 2.5 liters of capability there to store water. That goes in. If I need to go to the bathroom and I can't, not allowed to bury it. Some places in California, you're not allowed to actually bury any feces. They just have to carry it out. So you get a wag bag. My rain jacket towards the top. Snacks right next to the water. My headlamp, sunblock, and then more toiletry stuff. That's going to go in the front zipper here. Sunglasses, trekking poles, and my camp shoes, or if I need to cross a creek, these are what I'm going to use, my flip-flops here. And those are going to go on the outside of the bag. So now I've got my bag full. Still extra room there if I needed to carry extra food, more jackets, other stuff like that. Or if I needed to share the tent with my climbing partner or my backpacking partner. Close it, push all the air out, cinch it down. It's there. For now, I'll put one trekking pole on, because I'm only going to use one most of the time. Now my bag's ready to go. Now for day hiking, and using a smaller, much smaller backpack. So this was 45 liters for 4 days, 3 days maybe. This is 1 day. It's only about 14 liters, about all you need. It has a built-in water reservoir, and I'm only going to need a jacket, some snacks, maybe a medical kit, and some of the other stuff that we went over earlier on the checklist. So much, much smaller. You don't need a massive bag like that if you're just going to go up and down Dog Mountain. hand it back over to Christina.
Alrighty. Alright, y'all, that's all we had planned for tonight, for our workshop. So I'm gonna stop recording now and we'll open it up for questions. I also realized I didn't show my packing process, so if folks have questions about that or want to see it, I could unpack it for people, but we're gonna stop recording.